Hey everybody out there, how's it going? It's been a long time, about 6 months now since I've done a video, so most of the time, I don't know, I've pretty much just been kind of dealing with my own stuff, and whole Canadian election kind of went by, so that was fun. Not really, but yeah, I managed to donate some buttons and stuff. I showed it on the channel a while back or whatnot, but anyways, yeah, unfortunately, we up here in Canada are kind of doomed. I mean, you can kind of look at it as a bit of a success because, well, the Liberals lost some seats, but, I mean, compared to last election, there was a big outrage, mostly because of Harper, and to be honest with you, I mean, the people, older people are getting older, you know, they're starting to die off. The generation that's going to be replacing the old one is, unfortunately, very left-leaning. And up until about 4 years ago, I was kind of on their side, but at the same time, I was always against authoritarianism. And you know, it used to be about 10, 20 years ago, the belief, you know, up here in Canada, even though when you try to compare Canada's gauge from left and right, it's kind of a joke compared to the States, because even our conservatives aren't really in it for the conservative aspect of. It's pretty much just corporate welfare and interventionism. But the thing about you know, what's been going on here in Canada is it really does kind of like creep me out to think that Canadians, you know what I mean, like for the left, I mean, it's such a double standard. Like, they will take a conservative and judge him at such a higher percentage of like, oh, if they do something wrong, then oh no, then they're automatically perceived as the worst, you know, parts of society. But yet the left, you know, they openly vote for a guy who did blackface 3 times. And I mean, just imagine if Trump did blackface 3 times. There would be not only an impeachment, but they'd probably have like a, you know, like a stake with a bunch of kindling on the bottom of it, ready for Trump and anybody who supported him and his family. And it's just total double standards, mostly because we have a prime minister. Now, if Trump acted like Trudeau, he would have been impeached a long time ago, for example, and I don't think a lot of people would have a problem with it. The problem is, here in Canada, we will let Trudeau get away with anything he wants. I mean, this is a guy who's got 4 different ethics violations, which is the most that any other, I don't even think prime ministers before have even really had them. There's been like conflicts of interest, yeah, mind you, that happens in politics, but you know, it's kind of interesting just how much, how blatantly untransparent the liberal kind of regime has been. And unfortunately, Canadians en masse are voting for them. So I mean, it's kind of funny now because like now I guess Scheer's kind of on the other end. He's got the Hillary feel now because he kind of won the popular vote but lost the way things are done here in Canada. So the Liberals kind of got their seats. But you know, it's always as much as you try to say here in Canada, oh well, the Liberals don't have a majority. They're going to use the NDP to get that majority. They always do. The left teams up on every sort of, like, that's one of the reasons why I just had enough of the NDP. I mean, the fact that there's just so many different reasons why I left that. And, you know, I'm more of a libertarian conservative kind of center right now because I don't want to go too far, you know, to the point where, you know, where it's like the thing about authoritarianism is that it's prevalent on both the right and the left, and sadly it used to just be kind of more on the right, you know, like the more traditional conservatives, stuff like that, but it's gone to this whole cultural Marxist kind of shift on the left is has just done nothing but destroy just the quality of life for everyone, you know, and that's pretty much what socialism, communism does, you know. It's pretty messed up. So, I mean, obviously I was going for Bernier, and I think he did a great job trying to get his message out there. Out of all the candidates, he was the one that was taking questions from everyone, and he was taking a lot of critical questions, and and the sad thing about that is that the mainstream media here, you know, I mean, the purpose of a democracy is for everybody to have, like, a clear and concise idea of what the platform, what the people are, who the leaders are representing for their party platform. And that's just not really what you got from the CBC. A lot of the times they were unlisting Bernier. They were, they were just giving him like a lot of critical. Like they did have a couple, some really good sit down conversations. But with the media, it never when they're talking to Trudeau, there's never like any do you denounce the rise in Antifa and Marxism and groups like that are supporting the NDP and liberal causes. No, it's none of that crap. But every time Bernier had an interview, they were bringing up like everything from like incels to like racism and like Islamophobia and all this crap. And it's stupid. It's funny. It goes to show you just how much of a double standard it is here in Canada. And I think if a lot of Americans came up here to Canada, they'd be like, well, for one, it's kind of true to a certain degree of what like Michael Moore said about Canada. Like a lot of our news is pretty much just milquetoast, but it used to be more milquetoast, but now they're like Toronto. There's still reports of gang violence and shootings and stuff like that on Kitchener, London, different individual locality of TV stations. But overall, you're still seeing an increase in gun violence and gang violence and stuff like that, and that has a lot to do with bringing in mass refugees and bringing in, not going after gangs in certain areas that kind of deserve it. It's kind of funny how, anybody who really wants a gun here in Canada can get one illegally if you go to the poorest neighborhoods. And they haven't. They don't give a shit about and the thing about it too is that, liberalism, it's good in a certain way where it makes you understand that there are people in bad situations and economic, aspects of life and cultural components and stuff like that. But at the same time, the thing about what made classical liberalism great is that it would acknowledge the problem, but like try to find in a way where it would like benefit the community as a whole, not just specific aspects or groups or races or cultures inside of a certain area. It was something that was put in there to try to make things better for everyone. And hey, with mixed results, sometimes good, sometimes bad. A lot of the times, you'll end up with loaded programs that only kind of cost taxpayers money and doesn't actually affect the overall outcome of what the program was implemented into change in the first place. And I don't think the Liberals have really kind of moved on and learned from what policies don't work and what policies do, because now they're going more further and further to let's spend everything we have now. I have a problem with anybody who supports a leftist party here in Canada just because, and actually a lot of places, just because like most of our countries are not responsible for the printing of their own money. We have a small group that does most of the printing of all of our nation's currency, and they have absolutely no accountability towards the people of that nation. Take the Federal Reserve, for example. The Bank of Canada here in Canada, where it's not the Bank of Canada. It's owned by people who, you can't even find out who these people are because they own the stocks, and it's ridiculous. And I think they have it on they sell like the stocks or whatnot privately, and those people are making a shit ton of cash because it's guaranteed return on investment, and the regular people have no possible way of getting in on that. And what they do is they charge nations a fee to print their own money when nations used to do that beforehand. Now, understandable, there's going to be problems when you look at the wild, wild west of way back in the day. Let's say I think around like the 1900s or whatnot, they had multiple banks, and each one of those banks were chartered to be able to print certain types of money in certain types of areas. They had different laws in different states and whatnot. And so what it did was that there was about 12 or 13 major banks in an area, for example. Everything from credit unions, like you see in It's a Wonderful Life, to what was considered as the big banks of the time. And what they managed to do was the big banks managed to consolidate it and convince people into thinking that there was a problem with multiple different banks printing out different types of money and stuff like that. And what happens is that sometimes the banks would go under, or people would have a run on the bank, or there'd be panic that would be created. Now, a lot of this panic was artificial back in the day, but there was also, like, there were certain aspects of it actually being true, because there was, most of the time, like back then, I think a good percentage of the population was agrarian. And so it was mostly the bigger cities that were pumping out a lot of farm equipment, that were doing, like, take State Farm, for example, insurance companies like that. They were making money hand over fist, but they were also, in a lot of ways, helping farmers out, being able to, get better machines, stuff like that, to be able to till and operate the land, and to, to produce more food for people, and to make farming more of a easier, at least, thing for them, so they didn't have to bust their back plowing using the old metal plow and the cattle, where you're just like, that was just crazy on people. A lot of farmers were, they had to retire when they were getting old, because of just the amount of back and the arthritis and all the pain that they were having from working the land. So I mean, overall, when you look at kind of like the way things were back then, it was kind of a good thing. But when banks started to go under, people were losing their livelihoods, and so there was that concern. And so the big banks at the time said, hey, I have an awesome idea. Let's, why don't we just consolidate it, like have it so that the Federal Reserve, so we have like a group of bankers, and they all work together, and, like, they made it sound really good. But the thing was, back in the time, there were still people that were smart. I mean, Andrew Jackson, as much as people try to criticize him, like, he killed a lot of natives and stuff like that. It wasn't really good, but you gotta look at the historical context of the fact that, like, the natives were playing both sides, the English and French. They, they were warring with. It was a different time back then. Like, Andrew Jackson grew up having, like, his family, like, members of his family and friends from a young age being slaughtered by, in the Indian Wars and stuff like that, in the French Indian Wars. And it's just crazy how, when you look at things in a historical context, it's so easy to be like, oh, well, he was so evil and whatnot. But I mean, he actually tried, like, well, I think it was, I'm not too sure if that quote where he said that he killed the bank is actually accredited to him, but he was definitely a proponent against the establishment of the time. And I mean, they tried to kill him so many different times. So I mean, in a way, people kind of draw the modern comparisons to Trump nowadays, to Andrew Jackson. But I mean, I think it's definitely, it's funny because so many people I've talked to will make fun of the states. They'll be like, oh yeah, those gun-toting, fighting everything kind of Americans, like, and it's like looked on in kind of a bad way. And, like, okay, yeah, I understand, and, like, the pointless interventionism and stuff like that, and sending, like, the war in Iraq and all that crap, and there's a lot of corruption going on in the States, but, there's that, like, side to America that, as a Canadian, I really do appreciate, and actually am proud of you guys for, for any Americans listening in on what I'm saying right here, just because, I mean, that will for freedom, to fight for liberty, to, for that drive to, kick some ass when ass needs to be kicked. That's what I want America for. That's why you guys should be damn proud of yourselves. I mean, obviously you don't want to be that bully in the room, pushing everybody around. And sadly, it seems like a lot of globalists, neocons, and establishment on the left and right, are completely guilty of. But I mean, when I try to tell people, I mean, if you look at just how, I mean, like, for me, for example, like, I've said many different times where, I watch a lot of different media outlets out there, just because I like doing it. I have a lot of time, I mean, like, I don't really have a lot going for myself in like, my life, but I have a lot of time to, take in politics, take in philosophy, theology, all that stuff. And so, I mean, there's a lot with Alex Jones that I actually disagree with. Like, you know, I mean, I'm not anti-vax, but I definitely think that there's some questions that need to be asked. And hey, when there's problems with bad batches of vaccines, or there's girls that are getting sterilized from Gardasil shots and stuff like that, you know, you have the CDC whistleblower that came out against that, like, autism study where he found in black males, young black males, you know, that there was you know, a higher risk of autism and stuff like that, and he was silenced. And, you know, the media, like, the funny thing is, for most people, it's like, it's a really weird kind of issue when you talk about the vaccines, because they're all like, oh, well, you're either, like, to them, they think you're, like, the stupidest person ever for, you know, even just doubting the safety of the medical establishment. But then it's kind of interesting, because most people on the left, for example, are very critical of big government and big kind of corporations, but yet it doesn't really kind of, like, click until you talk to them that the big pharma could maybe not have the best interest, and maybe has more of a profit motive care than they do the actual overall benefit to society. I mean, take the reasons. I mean, a lot of people are saying that there's probably some cure for cancer out there, and actually one of the people in my clan, he was telling me how just the way that the pharmaceutical companies work, they'll buy up patents or buy up ideas for different types of drugs, different types of things. And it's the same thing with actually a lot of big businesses will go out and buy off their competitors if possible, and then they'll just sit on different ideas, or, you know, inventions, you name it, that are probably just sitting in some big factory somewhere, kind of like in Indiana Jones with the Raiders of the Lost Ark. We have top people on it. Top people. Yes. But, you know, it's kind of sad that way. So, I mean, I think a lot of people have needed just a little bit of time to kind of chillax and you know, kind of just take a breather, you know? I mean, the thing about politics is that it just gets shoved down your throat so hardcore. Like, if you're trying to watch TV, it's just, like, the attack ads were ridiculous, and I think a lot of Canadians were kind of dismayed about that. But let's be honest with you, turnout was at a record low. I think a lot of people were just kind of like, we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. Because a lot of people are still stuck on that left-right paradigm. I mean, I've tried talking to people, the average people. You try to bring up libertarianism, they think it's some sort of liberalism or something like that. You know, they have no idea about looking at things from beyond the left-right paradigm, and to acknowledge the fact that there's an authoritarian element that exists in both the left-right kind of systems and schools of thought. And for me, the reason why, you know, I mean, I've watched people like Sticks and Hammer, 666, he's awesome dude. He's pretty funny, and I like watching his videos. But it's kind of funny because he pretty much calls anybody on the who's more center kind of fence sitters. You either, you know, believe in ripping people off or stealing from them to pay your life kind of thing, or you you know, or you're a staunch individualist who believes in less taxes and all that stuff. You know what I mean? For me, I believe that there's a balance, you know, that needs to be had, but I don't believe in going too far left or too far right, for that matter. For me, I'm very staunch anti-authoritarian, and what that means to me is that, you know, I'm kind of like that critical asshole in the room that criticizes everyone, but I mean, at the same time, you also have to accept when, you know, there's a need for authoritarian aspects of society. I mean, you know, as much as, like, I like the idea of anarcho-communism or anarcho-capitalism or voluntarism or minicurism, you name it. I mean, there's a certain aspect where, you know, you're going to need to have somewhat of an authoritarian kind of aspect, or, you know, I mean, take certain types of industry. You're going to need those alpha male asshole geniuses that are just really great at inventing things. I mean, it's not like you can really change human, you know, just the way that humans are. I mean, as much as you try to, like, come up with all these different ideas and say that, oh, things are a social construct. I mean, there's definitely a biological aspect of human nature, which, you know, if you try to say is, you know, something else, you know, it's going to be an obvious disparity between reality and, you know, pretty much ideology, really, when you think about it. I mean, communism, the whole thing about it is just, you know, it's weird because it's based off this, like, pyramid structure of oppression, you know, hierarchy of, you know, if you're just, you know, they say they're not racist, for example, but if you're born white, then you're automatically on the bottom of the pyramid, you know, because you have all this, like, perceived privilege and whatnot, which I think is pretty funny. But I mean, at the same time, it's pretty crazy because we have so many different, I don't know, like, we have so many different complexities to humanity, you know, of the human condition. And so it's really kind of weird to how politics is kind of like, it's not really moral at all. Like, I was watching Stefan Molyneux's video about the election or whatnot, and, you know, it's very true. It's gotten to the point where people are very selfish. They vote pretty much for what they can get out of politics, as opposed to, you know, what the cost of it involves in either their communities, themselves, overall, you know, the rising in inflation and stuff like that. Like, for me, I'm just starting to see, like, I mean, the conservatism, more like the Republican aspect of conservatism, has always been like, you know, the hypocrisies of the right, for example, used to always be kind of like, I don't know, it's like, you always used to know about the hypocrisy on the right, for example. Like, they say they want less government, but they're all about corporate welfare. You know, they say less government, but they're all about, you know, bloating the defense budget to a point where, you know, it goes beyond protecting our troops and making sure that they have the proper material and the proper stuff that they need to kick ass. And it goes from, you know, pretty much being the world police, you know, for every other batshit crazy country out there that has their own petty squabbles that don't really care about us, you know. Canada's kind of lucky because we don't have to spend as much money. So that's why Canada can afford healthcare and can afford a lot of social programs. But unfortunately, you know, the U.S. is kind of sick of being the world police. So, you know, more countries are having to pony up, which is actually kind of a benefit to the America. And I have to say, that's great that you finally have a president that gives a shit and is actually helping try to reduce, you know, save some lives, get some people out of some countries that you don't need to be in. But the thing about that is when you do that, that brings down Raytheon stock. That brings down Halliburton stock. You know, I mean, those are really the companies, sorry, that run countries into the ground for their own financial gain. And they're completely backed by the military-industrial complex. And the sad thing about that, too, is that there's a lot of insider trading. I mean, if you look at how a lot of congressmen and women and senators have made their money over the years in the States, it's mostly been from off of the same political deals that they do on a regular basis. If they have foreknowledge of whether or not a policy or a regulation is going to hurt or better a business, they're going to be making financial bets on the side of that. You know, it's crazy how, you know, like, there's so many different countries, and it's like when we have, like, this is why I kind of like, I have to say, you know, I'm starting to get more of the black pill. I'm starting to kind of look at the whole, like, anarchy. I'm starting to look at, like, the whole kind of, like, what's the point of even having a government that, you know, ultimately we're just electing psychopaths. Ultimately, we're putting people in power who end up becoming our priest class, who pretty much base their entire sales pitch as vote for me. I'm either better than the other guy, or I won't rip you off as much, or, you know, or I'll give you more free stuff than that guy. You know, that's pretty much what politics has become. It's you know, I think someone said that it was a sale of advanced bill of sale for goods or whatnot, for or the biggest return that they'll get financially when you invest in a politician. So it's pretty crazy, though. It kind of does seem that there's really not much of a choice for us out there. I mean, like here in Canada, the PPC didn't get any seats whatsoever. And obviously, new party, stuff like that. And the thing is, it's like 4 years ago, Canadians were looking at Harper as if he was the devil, being like, we need to vote this guy out. He's the worst ever. And then they vote in, somebody who's just as bad, just as non-transparent, just as authoritarian, and if not more than Stephen Harper is. But is the media criticizing Trudeau as much as they did Harper? No. No, they did everything that they tried to do to push this whole, like, blackface thing. Oh, yes, it's bad, but... Like, almost every CBC thing that I saw was, oh, yes, this is bad, but, But if Trump says, oh, there are both people, there are good people on both sides of the Charlottesville thing, and there was, bad elements of both the left and the right there, the media will just, edit it to say that he said that there was good people on both sides, that they were... That, he's saying that, oh, this means that he supports Nazis. Even though they won't admit that he was also saying that there were, like, communists on the other side, too, that, weren't up to any good. And that's exactly, if anybody that looks at Charlottesville could see that the police were kettling people into, like, areas where they knew they were going to be. It was just such a horrible shit show. And it's sad that one lady lost her life and whatnot. But, I mean, at the same time, they also had communists that were, trying to mess with the guy who was driving into her. But even though he had, like, I guess he had some neo-Nazi stuff on his, like, I guess his computer or whatnot, or I guess that was partially behind some of the ideology that he had there. He obviously got crucified when it came to the whole trial. Like, they weren't going to give him a fair shake or anything like that, or give him any credibility of the fact that he was trying to get out of the situation. But at the same time, too, like, I've seen videos where, like, the one vehicle that ended up, like, blocking, like, there was a truck there, like, 10 minutes before this lady was, like, killed, and like, they blocked it on that, kept it there at that intersection. Not, like, it looks like it was impossible for anybody to actually get out of that area there, and it was a kind of a long, narrow street where it wasn't really much of a way to get out. But, the guy obviously panicked and got pissed off, too, so, he's definitely going to be in jail for a long time. So, I don't know, just the thing about the culture war is that it's funny how certain elements, like Charlottesville, for example, was pretty much used by every leftist thing out there to be like, look at this! These neo-Nazis are everywhere! But yet, when Antifa, goes out and tries to kill people, or kills people, or does stupid shit, and get themselves killed, there's really no, like, the left doesn't really, or the media, for example, be like, this is an example of obvious leftist violence, like, oh my god, we need to do something about this now. Like, it's just kind of interesting, because it just kind of shows you that there's just this huge double standard. I mean, for me, I'd have no problem with the media if they just applied everything, same standard to both sides, and criticized and, would give them credit for doing good things and criticize them for doing their bad things. I mean, that's how you kind of keep a democratic society that keeps you in power, that keeps that check between, the power of the people and the power of the elites. But unfortunately now the left has gone to such a point where any criticism of their, like, base ideology means that you're automatically one of the others. Which is sad because, I mean, I always considered more of the left as kind of, like, accepting of different types of, like, alternative ideas or different perspectives of things. It was more of the strict, rigid conservatism where it was like, go to church on Sunday and, conservative beliefs and, and hey, I mean, for the longest time, I mean, hey, and if it works for people now, I mean, by all means, like, I mean, I definitely do see kind of a battle between, I guess, good and evil, I guess, if you're trying to think about it in this kind of a spiritual aspect, because, people that do, that get up in high throngs of power, especially if they don't have to deal with like the rest of the people who are just trying to get by, on a regular daily basis, it's easy for that kind of elitism to grow. It's easy for, if you don't care about the plight of average Canadians or average citizens or even the poor, there's also kind of a bit of a stigma to that, though, because I grew up poor. I always kind of had a bit of a class thing on my shoulders up until I realized that, most people are just trying to, the more money you have, the more taxes, the more problems you have, and people that are successful, yeah, they may put their life into their business. They may have a lot of really good willpower and stuff like that, but there's downsides to it. You can be how many times have we seen those movies where, it's about a man who realizes that he's sacrificed too much either power, too much of himself or herself into a project where they've ended up suffering from family because of it. It's more of trying to find that balance. And so, it's kind of disingenuous to hate on people who are productive, who, in a certain way, yeah, it's like you can understand that those kind of people look at people who are freeloaders or people who are on, like, disability or using government services and stuff like that, and they ultimately see that as a drain, like they're having to pay for these people that aren't having to want to work for themselves and stuff like that, or, I think for the most part, like for people that are abusing certain systems and stuff like that, yeah, those people are assholes and they shouldn't be on those systems. But it's like, at the same time, it's really kind of hard to go through like every single case of everybody on disability, because it ends up costing more money, or on welfare and stuff like that. And, there's people that have been on it for years and years and have no intention of being like, oh, why should I go out and make money for myself or whatnot when the government should provide it? Which is really a dangerous kind of way of thinking. Sadly though, it's like, I don't know, it's like we may be kind of going towards that Wall-E scenario where, or that they had that like Ready Player One, where everyone's like kind of just plugged into an escapist kind of outlet because the rest of the world is just completely broken down and just barely running. It's I can kind of see us kind of going down that road. How much automation are we going to be able to put? A lot of people think that, in 10 years, everything's going to be automated. And to me, that's kind of the same thinking as those people in the 60s that thought by now we'd be on the fucking moon, like we'd have like a pill form for everything, and everybody would be healthy and all the diseases would be cured. And sadly, that's not the case. And I think that this automation stuff is happening. But the sad thing is, okay, let's say if you, for example, average Joe, let's say you had like a shit ton of cash, for example. Okay, I wouldn't say average Joe. I'm saying you want to get into the business of like a tech company or whatnot. Like, it's ridiculous the amount of shit that you have to like do to be able to just be able to make make a product, for example, or to make things easier for people. It's like you have to go through all these like ridiculous regulations, ridiculous hoops, and let's say if you come up with something that completely revolutionizes something, well, how many times have those people been silenced or driven out of business by their harsh regulations or the government? And I think it's you need a certain amount of regulation for safety issues, like kind of that whole freedom and security argument is viable, but it's only really kind of viable to a certain extent, because once you get to the point where it's all about security and there's no freedom, then you end up in those kind of 1984 Orwellian societies, or Brave New World societies, which it's kind of an amalgamation, it's like, or it was what was it, the one, the TX11 something or whatever. It's like everybody's all medicated, or Brazil kind of thing, or Kafka, all those different movies and books that warned us way back in the day to not go down these authoritarian roads. But think of how much regulation it would take if just a regular person would like what was it, for for a drug, for example. I mean, there used to be, back in the day, they'd have higher regulations where you'd have to have like a test, you'd have to like go for a long period of time and have like these trial runs to find out whether or not a product that could potentially affect people's health, could affect the way society runs. There's, you need almost like a lot of different data to support that it's safe to do what you're doing. So how is Elon Musk talking about within a couple years he's going to be having these little brain chip thing interfaces with your phone in the mall? Like, that makes absolutely no sense. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that, I mean, there's so much when it comes to greasing the government wheels to be able to get stuff done. It's to a point where, as much as people joke around about capitalism and whatnot, I mean, it's crony capitalism that we're under right now. And it's a globalist cabal that owns a lot of the money printing potential. So they're siphoning off mass quantities of wealth. And what gets me is that I think more people on the right are starting to see, like, who are more fiscally conservative or are trying to be fiscally conservative, even though they have no problem throwing money towards the war budget or fences in other countries like Israel. I mean, like I've said before, I'm kind of neutral on that whole thing. It's a conflict between two cultures that's never really going to end. And the only way it's going to end is if Israel keeps knocking down all those homes, and Palestinians got no place to live except from prison camps. But at the same time, I don't agree with Hamas bombing the shit out of Israel, or like it's funny how like RT or Democracy Now, how they like are very left leaning, even though like they're supposed to be alternative, and like they'll show like, oh, look at these poor innocent Palestinian protesters, and look at this horrible Israeli aggression. And you see these people that are like having slings and like whipping fucking rocks at troops. Like, I'm sorry, but don't fucking poke a much larger fucking like a force that could kick the shit out of you, and you're using like fucking sticks and stones. It's like you're bringing a knife to a fucking gunfight every goddamn fucking time. It's stupid. It's like, why are you giving them a reason to shoot you when you don't have like the ability to like kill them as much as they have the ability to kill you? You're just kind of fucking provoking shit. And then like they show these images of these people who are like 2 minutes beforehand were like whipping fucking rocks at soldiers and shit like that are in these like little makeshift stretchers, being like, oh, I got shot with a beanbag, or I got shot in the arm, because, well, fuck, you're kind of throwing rocks, you can kill somebody. I mean, it's a fucking aggressive form of display. I mean, if you're gonna protest, do it fucking peacefully, do it the right way. But the thing about protesting is that, to be an effective protester, you have to kind of sacrifice yourself. You gotta sacrifice your security, really, to let people know how authoritarian the attacking or opposing or aggressive side is. It's kind of unfortunate that way, but that's really how a lot of people understand when they see tyranny, and they empathize for that person that's being tyrannized. That's really the only way that they'll actually get up and do anything. I mean, the thing about the whole kind of leftist and Marxist agenda is a lot of the times they won't accept the fact that there's problems out there. Like it's this ideology that, oh, if everybody pays a little bit more, then everybody will be more equal. But the result is that group of people that decides how much money gets taken from the productive people are the ones that end up becoming the higher elite productive class. And for them to be able to maintain that, they have to use a very authoritative ideology, which involves heavy taxation, which involves heavy regulation, which involves control of a lot of aspects of our lives. And most people, unless they understand that every time that they're going to, let's say if you're going to go to a restaurant, and you go to the restaurant, and all of a sudden there's a guy that, when you first get to the door, who says, "Oh, hey, how's it going? I haven't seen you in a while or whatnot. Let's, like, do you mind if I sit down with you?" And so you're like, "Oh, okay. Well, I could use the company or whatnot. I could use the, I could use the like communication, the feeling of community or the interaction with others, for the fact that we're social animals." And so you sit down, you order the food or whatnot. The other person, they order their food or whatnot. When the bill comes along, they automatically assume that you're going to be paying for it. And so it's like, if they don't tell you at first, most people, when they pay their bill, they'll pay their tax on the bill, and they won't think anything of it. It's not as if like there's somebody from the government every time you try to make a purchase that's being like, "Oh, right, I'm going to take this out of your wallet, or I'm going to take this out of your bank account, and have a nice day. I'll see you in either 10 minutes or a couple hours." Like, a lot of people, if that was happening to them, let's say if they had somebody that was like constantly being like, "Oh, hey, I need money for something here. Can I see your wallet?" Like, most people would be like, "Fuck off, go away." But when the government does it through taxation, it's totally fine. We're totally okay with it. And I think it's kind of funny because most people will, like, if one person comes up and says, "I need money from your wallet," you'll be like, "Well, what do you need it for?" And you're going to be automatically suspicious of that person because you don't know if that person's on behalf of the greater good or a community. You don't know if that person's going to take that money and go put it into like some charitable cause or whatnot, or put it towards something good or not, or if he's going to go over and blow it on alcohol or blow it on something, selfish. You just kind of like see that other person, and all of a sudden there's that warning signs in the back of your head that are saying, "Listen, this guy could possibly be out to scam me." There's those warning bells that go on. But like, let's say if somebody shows up as a representative from the government that's there to take your money, it'd be like, "Oh, well, I'm going to be putting it towards something good. I'll be putting it toward the roads. I'll be putting it towards this and that and that." Well, then you're more thinking, "Okay, I'm doing it for the collective greater good, so I'd have no problem then." But a lot of the times, it's not. The money that's actually taken never goes towards good things. I mean, it'll go towards paying off a deficit. It'll go off paying shareholders from some private freaking entity that's taken over the printing power of your country, but it won't be going towards the people that actually need it. And the thing about it is that the left, kind of globally, none of them really want to address this issue. And I mean, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I was talking before about the hypocrisy on the right. Well, the hypocrisy on the left is starting to get more and more just not only just pronounced, but just to a point where it's not possible to do the way they want it implemented realistically in any sort of manner. Take the Green New Deal, for example. If we were to tear down everything, make everything environmentally, economically, or the way that they want to do the Green New Deal, the way that would just overhaul everything. I mean, yeah, it would probably be good for people who are workers, for example, because they're going to be construction, for example, is going to be construction up to yin yang. And so as much as that would seem great for them in the long run, it would not be a good thing. Why is that? Well, when you have the fact that everything's being put in towards materials or whatnot for building, imagine the materials that it would take just to rebuild the entire infrastructure of the United States of America. Like the way that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wants to do, which would involve anywhere, I think estimated with the healthcare overhaul they wanted, would be around $60 trillion, which is just crazy. The value of the actual money currently in circulation, if they printed that much money, would go down. And I think it's kind of funny how many people who are Yang Gang supporters don't realize that when you give out a shit ton of free cash and you print out money, we don't have anything that backs it before. There used to be a principle that we would have to have a certain amount of money in the bank, or we'd have to have a certain amount of wealth of precious materials, like the gold standard, for example. That kind of kept banks from being able to lend out more than they were able to. But what happens is they got rid of GlassSteagall. And the thing about GlassSteagall is that, you know, when you look at things for American regulation of the markets and whatnot, it affects not just America. It affects pretty much the entire North and South America economies from American policies. And it allows speculation. It allows for bubbles to practically be made out of the market just by bets on everything from put options to futures. So it's gotten to a point where we've allowed the financial class to pretty much rule over the policy of the rest of the world. And that's pretty much where this whole globalism thing comes from. And I mean, if you look at the UN, the IMF, the way the World Bank kind of plays countries off of each other, the way that they, instead of using the UN to solve conflicts, they will back certain dictators, give them a shit ton of cash that they can't fucking pay back within any kind of allotted time. And after they've established power or they've killed their political or financial rivals, they will be indebted to the IMF to the point where they're not able to pay back the money that they're getting from taxation, so they end up actually giving a lot of the natural resources or land or you know, like everything from mineral rights, stuff like that. All that gets put over towards you know, these giant, pretty much multinational UN kind of organizations that do control the flow of everything from, I guess, like the financial ratings of how well credit for like a country's able to produce or to pay back debt, and they will completely use it to their own advantage. And unfortunately, they've been using it a lot to promote this whole Agenda 2021, which wasn't going the way that they wanted to, so they've pushed it back to 2030. And it's kind of scary, but it almost seems that the next 10 years, I think the globalists have kind of realized that they're going to have to push a lot of socially progressive and kind of like, they're going to be pushing a lot of agenda in the next 10 years. And I think we're seeing it more with the crackdown on free speech, the global kind of trade deals that are trying to make sure that people aren't allowed to share memes or to get their ideas across, because pretty much that's how people have been realizing that their voice matters. When you have YouTubers that do get popular for saying the right things, or people on different other platforms like BitChute. I've actually been using more BitChute than I have been YouTube. I mean, I'll go on YouTube just to kind of like check out in the subscriptions to see if there's anything new or interesting. But most of the time I'm spending now on BitChute and other platforms, Minds, Gab, you name it. I've been using the Dissenter. So I've been enjoying it that way. The thing is, though, I mean, like, it really does kind of seem like an empty protest overall, because most people will stick on Facebook, Twitter, the main platforms, until they realize that it's just complete tyranny. I mean, I understand the argument where people are saying that you know, if you go on the enemy's platforms and you get the word out that way, you know, but have backups, that's also a good option too. I mean, heck, I'm not the kind of person that I don't have a plan to save the world or whatnot. I'm just trying to make sense of all the craziness, you know. It's I mean, there used to be like a, you know, kind of like a morality, if you can call it that, towards different types of political ideologies and whatnot. But nowadays it's just it's crazy. It really is. You know, it's I don't know. It's gotten to a point where I'm really kind of considering if they're looking for any Canadian refugees in America. Oh my god. I'm so done with Canada, to be honest with you. I mean, in a lot of regards, we have a interesting kind of way that we do our politics here. Like, we have multiple different parties, but for some reason we still just go with the left-right paradigm. I always think it's funny when I'm talking to people in the States that are just fed up with politics on either both the left or the right, or are undecided. And they're always like, oh, I wish we had more parties to choose from. It's like, well, you know, Canada, we have, like, I think, what, like, over 30 registered freaking parties, and, like, people vote just for the main two. I'm lucky if you can get, you know, like, a third one, and even that's kind of, like, socialist, leaning towards communism. So we're kind of doomed up here, but it's kind of funny when you look at, like, East Coast Canada. Like, there used to be a time when the fisheries in Canada and the East Coast, they were actually productive. They were one of the best industries in Canada, the fisheries. They were heavily kind of regulated. I think around like the 60s and the 70s, once Canada became, because I think Newfoundland was the last province to join in, I think in the late 60s. I think I was either 68 or 69. I'm not 100% sure, but they joined Canada, and what happened was the environment. They started regulating the amount of fish, what you could take, and I guess in a way it was kind of done to protect the fisheries. And I understand the reason why they tried to like there's obviously you want to have the conservation or whatnot, but the thing about conservation in Canada is that it makes it absolutely not really worth anything, because within what I think about 100 kilometers, is it 100 or 200 kilometers east of Canadian land, you're in international waters. And the problem with international waters is that there's very few regulations on what's allowable out there. Like, I mean, it's funny how they give us shit for plastic straws and plastic bags, and you see all these fucking idiot trendy fucking businesses trying to get rid of plastic bags and plastic straws and trying to make themselves as if they're like, oh, we're saving the world. But there's more fucking shit that gets dumped in the fucking oceans that nobody gives a shit about. You know, more pollution there. Like, what we have for fucking plastic usage in North America is a drop in the bucket to the amount of shit that gets fucking thrown in the fucking rivers in China and India. And sorry for this, I have fucking idiots that keep phoning me. But anyways, you know, it is murder them all. Okay. But anyways, kind of you can see why I haven't really done videos for a while, because I'm just so fucking fed up with everything. But I've realized that, you know, there is a decent, oh crap, I just got it on me there, but there is a decent outlook to this whole Canadian election. You know, we have re-elected our first black prime minister, and in solidarity I am going to take this Sharpie marker right here, and because, you know, Canada is so progressive, you know, half of Canadians voted for a leader who likes to do blackface. You know, I mean, it's his thing. You know, I might even start singing Deo afterwards. You know, Deo, we said Deo. I'm kind of in a good mood. No, I'm not actually going to paint my face black because, yeah, it's pretty messed up. But I'm just saying, it's gotten to a point where it's like, does the left even understand that they're such hypocrites? Like, do they understand that, like, trying to increase a giant bloated bureaucracy is not the fucking solution to your fucking problems? To, like, take money away from productive fucking people who are barely trying to make it as it fucking is, to make everybody equally fucking poor is dumb? To take money out of the pockets from your fucking grandchildren to pay for fucking shit now that you don't really fucking need? Like, why do the left fucking understand that this is, like, completely bullshit? Like, that's what pisses me off. And I think the people that do on the left are fucking gotten to the point now where they're just black-pilled as fuck, because they don't want to be seen by their friends. Oh, God forbid that you like the policies of Orange Man, or anybody else who wants to talk about fiscal fucking responsibility. But no, the answer for the youngins nowadays is to, hey, just give us free fucking money so we don't have to do fuck all, pay for education so that when we do go for our fucking basket weaving fucking university course, what means fuck all and the actual chance to get a job in the future, you know. But it's okay, because the taxpayers will be paying for it to the point where businesses will leave the fucking country because it's too fucking expensive to operate in your fucking country, and you lose tons of jobs to the fact that you're sitting on a fucking breadline like Venezuela or fucking Argentina now. Like they had their Great Depression in 2000 and they're about to repeat it now 20 years fucking later. But you know, socialist policies for all. It's a fucking joke, it really is. But, sorry for my ranting. I kind of get onto that for a while. But, I don't know. It's crazy. And I'm starting to see that, fiscal conservatism is actually making more sense. You know, like, we need to either at least get a handle on this whole centralized private banking scheme. I mean, it's the biggest freaking thievery in, like, in the history of mankind. And it's like, they're like, oh, well, all that money, all that taxation is going to be going towards healthcare and education and stuff. Like, education? Are you kidding me? Like, you can ask anybody on the street, where does our money come from? And they won't fucking know. So if we can't even tell our fucking future generations where money comes from, I think we fucking failed our society overall. I'm just saying. I mean, they had what? Jim Flaherty, when he was the finance minister of Canada, on camera, this one guy, he did like a video, like almost like at least 10 years ago now, where he was doing this thing where he went to Jim Flaherty and asked him where they printed the money from. And he said, oh, it's the mint. But there's no bills that are actually printed at the mint. That's the funny thing. It's not the Bank of Canada that's printing it. At the time, it was a German subsidiary called Geistige and Devrient, or some weird fucking firm that was taking and then like an international some other weird name thing, and they're the ones that are like printing most of the money and taking like a fucking percentage of it. Like 8% of what we're still paying back in debt, and the overall debt here in Canada is what we borrowed. So that means that 92% of the debt that we're paying from all of our taxes, that we don't have money now apparently for the social programs the left says that we do have the money for, is going towards some faceless fucking entity that's robbing the world fucking blind. And when you try to talk to anybody about it, when you know, like when I was in, I don't know, it's kind of weird here in Canada. Because like if you want to like go for the Conservative Party, let's say if they have like a rally or whatnot, you have to like RSVP a lot of the times, and like they'll check your like social media history. Well, this is what happened under Harper. This is what he was doing because he was such a fucking asshole. He was like, if you had like any kind of like opinion or whatnot, they would like completely ban you and like not let you in there. But like I went to the convention for the NDP, and it was funny because it's like, oh yeah, they'll allow anyone to go in there. You don't need to do any of that background check or whatnot. But if while you're in there, you happen to like be talking to somebody and you might have like, let's say, more fiscally conservative ideas, or you know, or you happen to think outside of the oh fucking again, really? Anyways, but if you happen to think outside of just the brainwashed fucking bullshit, then all of a sudden you're shunned. So it's a different kind of censorship. It's more of a group think. Oh, we have one that can see, you know, pretty much kind of thing. You know, from They Live, that quote there, but putting on the sunglasses. So then all of a sudden you're like completely ostracized from the group. But I did like the local writing for the NDP. They were super nice. Like, they were definitely in it for the right reasons. But on a national level, the NDP are pretty much pandering towards socialism and identity politics. It's kind of sad. And I guess like there's even certain parts of the union too that have been really, like, I've never seen such corruption by like Unifor and the media department this year. What they were doing for other fucking to other like independent journalists was just was just so authoritarian. It was so beyond anything fascist that we can even think of now. Because when people think of fascism, they're thinking of like the bootstraps kind of ideology from the 40s and shit. Like, we got a technocracy now that makes fucking all that shit that the Nazis did with their catalog system seem like it was a fucking child's play. You know? It's at a point now where, you know, like, we're getting closer and closer to every single thing that you do being completely tracked by a technocratic, you know, entity. So, you know, I mean, like, they're trying to get rid of, like, money now, and as much as money is a pain in the ass, because you kind of do need, you know, a physical representation of it, because as soon as you take away that physical representation and you go to a cashless society, then, you know, you're not really printing out, you're not even having to deal with the money supply in certain things like banks or whatnot, or how much, you know, how much you're taking out of tax, because they're pretty much, the whole system, they're going to be making money off of it, and they're going to be siphoning wealth in so many more easier schemes that they can do through a cashless society that way. And then there's that whole religious aspect of concerns of people who, you know, the whole mark of the beast, you know, where they can easily just turn your chip off and you're fucked. You know, a lot of that really kind of affects the way society operates, and affects people too. I mean, you know, if people know that there's a way that they can, you know, get money easier than having to work their ass off for it, they're gonna, you know, look every possible way for an easy way out that they can. And it's sad, you know, it's kind of just the way that, you know, things have kind of gone. I mean, at the same time too, I mean, it's not as if it's just like the millennials have just kind of like gotten lazy immediately. Like, it's not as if like they've just, you know, been like, oh, well, we're the generation now that doesn't want to do shit for anything. But it's kind of at the same time too, where, you know, if you look at like the older generation, there has been, like, it was a lot easier for them to get insurance, to buy a house, to like, the taxation was a lot less, the cost of living was a lot less too. But now a lot of the cost of living and everything has been going up. But the left thinks that it's all right to keep asking daddy government for more money, and that's not going to work, because that makes the value of everything else go down. Our $15 minimum wage here has increased food prices over 300% in the last, like, what, 6 years? You know, it's stupid. It's we're going through like this ridiculous inflationary period soon, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that the petrodollar is not going to be lasting that long. There's a global economic slowdown in China. India has been buying less cars. Like, there's so many different macro signs that there's an economic global slowdown. And it really does look like we're going to be coming into a very kind of 2008 kind of economic recession that's going to be coming, or possibly a depression. And it really does seem that, you know, there are certain people who are trying to fight it as much as they can, that are trying to keep the economy going. I mean, the fact that the U.S. has became one of the biggest exporters. I mean, if it wasn't for Trump, China would have the biggest economy right now. And I have to say, the U.S., what Trump's done for, like, as much as I'm kind of like, I have a love-hate relationship with protectionism, the protectionisms that have been put on to help the American people, when they've been like robbed for the past 30 years from having their jobs shipped over to China because it's cheaper for businessmen to fucking use the transportation costs from cheap shipping containers than it is to actually spend the time, effort, and investment, and, you know, paying for proper wages for your employees, paying for, you know, possible benefits, stuff like that, stuff that, you know, the middle class heavily relied on back in the day, you know, to be able to live a comfortable and a successful life. All that shit was pretty much designed by the establishment, left and right. And these are world leaders from every country. It's not just a U.S. thing. A lot of the times when I'm talking in my videos, I'll say it from a Canadian or an American perspective, or a Canadian, you know, looking at an American perspective kind of thing, you know. I mean, but the thing about it is that there's a lot of similarities of the way things are being rolled out. I mean, that's the problem when you have kind of a UN agenda. And the reason why they haven't really been able to implement it as much as they've wanted to, like, man, they've implemented about a good 80% of a lot of the UN agenda stuff they're doing, and some of these trade deals too, they've managed to sneak it in, and sadly, I think Trump probably didn't even notice it until it was too late, because, you know, you're passing these giant-ass trade deals, and there's so many different aspects of it, and I'm kind of glad that he did renegotiate it for American workers. But at the same time, I wish we'd have a leader here with balls that would renegotiate some of our trade deals for Canadians, which isn't what's happening. You know, we've made that open gap still there to make it easier for companies to go down to either Mexico or the States now, even within our own kind of NAFTA thing, or the USMCA, which is what they're calling the new adaptation of it. But I mean, Canada has not had a good seat at that renegotiation deals. And that is because Mexico got better deals because we elected a soy boy incompetent prick who decided to put in a bunch of virtue signaling eco warriors as our fucking trade minister, instead of somebody who was willing to actually work with our largest trading partner, who is 10 times bigger. One second. Well, I'm going to throw something else. Shut up, phone! But anyways, you know, like, that affects the trade deals. Like, I think there was even for a good, like, 3 to 4 months, like, I think, we weren't even allowed to the table to talk to the U.S. because of all of the bullshit that we were pulling. Trudeau tried to, like, hurt them with tariffs from our lumber and stuff like that. And the thing about the U.S. is, yeah, it hurt them a little bit, but they're still 10 times the economy than we are, 10 times the population. Like, we need the States economically more than they need us, unfortunately, as a Canadian. But the funny thing about it is that if you look out in certain parts of Canada, we're kind of doomed, because what they did to the east coast of Canada pretty much devastated any kind of individual economic like basis, like any kind of like industry that would stand alone on itself. We don't have that anymore on the east coast. All that stuff's been completely taken out, to the fact that, oh yeah, like, there's tons of government jobs out there. Oh, the thing about a bureaucracy and communism and socialism is that the bureaucracy always gets bigger. You know, like people will vote for them, obviously, because they're getting paid for them by the government, so they want, you know, as much government money as possible, because they're working for that. They want that nice little cushy golden parachute. They want those, you know. And the funny thing is, what the government here in Canada has replaced, has pretty much replaced the free market, has replaced independent businesses. Like, they made it so hard for them to operate, and for them to make money to the point where they can actually put, like, a decent amount of that stuff towards helping their employees and making it so that people want to work there. And the thing about the government jobs, though, is that they have all that stuff. So why would you want to get a private, you know, like a private job in a private sector, for example, when that private sector, you know, you may get some decent money depending on what company you're working for. But obviously in the private sector, there's tiers of companies that are doing good and tiers of companies that are doing bad. And obviously, if you're going to try to get into one of those companies that, when you're starting off, for example, if, let's say, you need the experience, or, you know, you happen to not want to move, and it happens to be in your area, there's so many different variables on why people will get into a job in these entry levels, you know, for the private sectors from different types of industries. And so they'll go in there, they'll work their ass off, and they either may get benefits, may not get benefits, you know, like stuff like that. And that's something that, you know, if they're putting in good work to the company, if the company's making decent money, then they should be able to be like, hey, yeah, I'll do some kickback there. Because if you look at it in the free market example, there's a lot of companies out there that will do stuff like that. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that are not in the very, very high amount of money that they're making, you know, that want to be able to have that perfect balance of providing a good service or a good product towards the community, making some money on the side, being able to pay off the bills, being able to pay off your employees and make sure, and then, you know, like if you're making more money after that, then maybe you want to give that little incentive to give that kind of you know, motivation for people in your company to want to, you know, to want to work harder, to want to work better. But when you're in a government job, everything's pretty much guaranteed. You're protected in every kind of way whatsoever, as long as you don't piss off the powers that be and you do your damn job and you act like a cog in the machine, then you get all that stuff. So there's no incentive for government workers to want to do a better job, because they've got big daddy government to bail them out every time that they, you know, fuck up or whatnot. You know, there's all these protections, there's all these, you know, different types of unionization, which, you know, unfortunately is great for people who do get sick, who really do need it. Let's say if they have, like, need an operation or whatnot, and they're going to be missing, like, upwards to a month or, hey, maybe even more of work, but they're good at what they do or whatnot, then yeah, it's good to have unions for that, so that they don't have to lose their job because they had something happen to them that's kind of out of their control, right? But at the same time, when you're doing it to the point where there's people that, you know, don't give a shit and will just not do their job, then it makes it harder for people that are there to use it, you know, for the right reasons. You know, like there's people that will take advantage of it. That's what I'm saying. And so unfortunately, you know, for businessmen and for businesses in general, they have to make that decision, you know, and that's why sometimes you'll find those private companies that, yeah, they're greedy and they'll, like Amazon, for example. But the thing about the left is what I kind of think is interesting, because I don't think they understand that when they say tax the rich, they're not actually taxing the rich. Like, that's what I think is so funny about this whole communism and socialism thing. They're always like, oh, the 1% needs to pay more. But the funny thing about it is that they're the same people who give tax breaks to those giant companies like Amazon, you know, like who get paid by taxpayers to practically, I think, what, $1 of every Amazon shipping package or whatnot is subsidized by the taxpayer from, like, one of the biggest, like, billion-dollar companies on the planet. Like, the richest man in the world needs government subsidies. Like Warren Buffett, who ended up being like this guy's a freaking billionaire, and he was one of the biggest receivers of, like, the Wall Street bailout package. Thanks, Obama. You know, I mean, and the guy's smiling all the way to the bank. You know, he bought Tim Hortons with the bailout money in Canada. Like, and now Tim Hortons quality, even though it was shit before, because I've worked there many times over the years and seen it, like, go downwards in the way that they had the quality of their food. And now it's just a joke. Now everything's all, like, pre-made in some factory in Oakville, flash frozen with liquid nitrogen, sent to, like, all these Tim Hortons locations, and, like, warmed up in these, like, crappy little fucking toaster ovens, and that's considered always fresh. Always Tim Hortons. But, you know, that's just an example of how, you know, how kind of, like, fake identity is, really, when you think about it, in a lot of regards, because a lot of it's kind of like, here in Canada, it's like, oh, you're Canadian, so you must like Tim Hortons. I hate Tim Hortons. I only, like, eat it if I, like, have to, or if there's, like, no other option, or I just happen to, like, be hungry and or whatnot, you know? Like, I try to avoid that shit as much as possible. It has the lowest caffeine content on the damn market. It's, like, the worst, lowest kind of quality crap that you can possibly get, and everything's, like, all sugary and shit, and none of it's at all baked fresh like they say it is. And it just goes to show you kind of, like, the illusion of it. But I mean, like, once you see, like, how the sausage is made, it's kind of hard not to, like, not to see it as, like, a good business or whatnot, you know? It's like, they do have a market there. Like, people will buy their stuff because Canadians are kind of complacent, I mean, in pretty much in the way we do things. And I think a lot of people know that. That's why people make fun of Canada as much as we do. as they do. And actually, Canadians make fun of Canada, to be honest with you. Just look at Newfie jokes are made by a lot of Newfies. So, oh, man. So I've just been kind of ranting for a bit. It's good to see you guys all again. Links for anyone who's listening to, like, I should probably do, like, shorter videos, but I'm just like, what's the point? You know, I'm probably just going to end up getting banned the more people that see my stuff here on YouTube anyways, eventually. I mean, we've got the Liberal, Canada's first black prime minister in charge now, so he's going to be probably cracking down on, I mean, he's already cracked down on the rebel. That was quick. I mean, he put an injunction, like last Thursday or something, against the rebel from joining question period. Like, oh, that transparency that he promised the first time round for freaking election, that's really coming through, isn't it? He's about as transparent as a black kettle pot. So, I mean, it is bad here in Canada. And anybody in the States, I just got to say, keep fighting. You know, your election's coming up. You guys know what to do. Vote Trump, because this is fucking ridiculous. And, I mean, if you guys get Yang in, you guys are screwed. Your economy's going to go to shit. He keeps saying how he has this wonderful plan for the economy or whatnot, but it's not a plan. It's not even a New Deal. The Green New Deal is just a copy of fucking, what was it, like Roosevelt's fucking plan way back in the day? A chicken in every pot? And let's see how that worked out. Not too well. Oh my god. But anyways, thank you all for listening to me, and just want to give a shout out to all those people out there who, you know, pretty much been telling me to make some more videos, because it's been a while. And yeah, I guess I'll try to do some more like the stuff that I was doing before. Well, I keep saying I'm going to do that, but I never really do. Let's be honest, I never do. I'm kind of more out there just like happy going to like other channels that are doing well and kind of like giving them encouragement. That's kind of how I like doing things. Because like right now, I'll be honest with you, I'm like disabled, living like, God, my life's not really going in like a really forward direction in a lot of regards. But you know, at the same time, I'm also into politics, so I can't help but criticize things and give my opinion on stuff. So thanks guys, thanks again, and yeah, keep on rocking the free world. Peace.